everybody, and welcome to a brand new edition of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and we're talking scary movies. I appreciate everybody tuning in for another brand new episode. You can catch new episodes every Wednesday night on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, that's youtube.com/C/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. And those episodes go up at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time every Wednesday night there. So make sure to get subscribed to the page. You'll get the alerts for when the videos go up, along with any other videos I choose to put up at that time as well too. And of course, we got our watch parties going on as well too. We still have our movie ones. We've taken a little bit of a break from the TV ones to give us just a little bit of a, like I said, a break from that there. But we are going to be going back to that sooner than later. But our TV watch parties that we'll be going back to will soon include some fun shows like From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. And I'm looking very much forward to putting Chucky on that as well this fall too. So we got some great stuff to look forward to. But in order to find out when our watch parties are going on, which do include our Wednesday night movie watch parties, you got to go to facebook.com/groups/T Scary Movie. Again, that's facebook.com/groups/T Scary Movie. Yeah, go on there, get subscribed to the page. You'll find out when we're doing our watch parties. You'll get to engage in other conversations with us as well too, and just overall have a lot of fun with us. It's a great time over there. And speaking of which, tonight we know we are watching Fear Street Part 3. That is what's coming up, that movie. So excited to talk to y'all about that here tonight. That's what we're watching here right after the show. But then Monday, we are going to do our first all-nighter. That's right. We are getting into our very first all-nighter. Yeah, we got a number of movies together that we're going to be watching. We're going to get that started this coming Monday here around 9:30 or so. So this coming Monday, the 26th, we're getting started around 9:30, and we are going all night, folks. We're going all night. We're going from 9:30 p.m. Monday the 26th until about 8 a.m. or so Tuesday the 27th. It's going to be tough, but we are going to make it for sure there. I'm going to have a lot of fun with that. So I hope to see a lot of y'all Monday night for that one. But getting into things tonight, we have two awesome movies to talk to y'all about here. If you recall, the last couple of weeks in the summer of horror, we have been talking the first two installments of Fear Street. We talked Fear Street Part 1, 1994, and we also got into Fear Street Part 2, which I believe, I always forget which one is which there. I think 1978 was Part 2, and then now we are here to Fear Street Part 3, 1666. That's the third of the Fear Street trilogy. We're going to be talking that, and we're also going to be talking the follow-up to Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Yeah, we actually talked about that last week with Fear Street Part 2, so it was perfect to get in and talk about Escape Room Tournament of Champions and Fear Street Part 3. Yeah, excited to talk both of those there. Yeah, folks, so why waste any time? Let's get, well, actually, no, can't get there yet. We got some great stuff coming up. What I thought was going to end up being very isolated episodes for all of you that we're going to be putting up there, we've gone the route of just committing to the summer of horror, and that has honestly been so much fun to really just stick to that and keep going with the whole summer of horror as opposed to going other routes there. So I have some great stuff coming up for you in addition to the all-nighter that we're going to do next week on Monday. Next Wednesday, we are going to be talking the latest M. Night Shyamalan thriller, Old, and Megan Fox's return to horror, Until Death. So yeah, next Wednesday, we're going to be going over Old Until Death in our continual Summer of Horror series. And I'm excited for that one. I get to see an early screening of Old, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I watched Till Death actually just the other week, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about that as well too because it's been a bit since we've been able to have a horror movie to talk about Megan Fox being in that wasn't Jennifer's Body. So this is going to be a welcome return because Jennifer's Body has a lot of ups and downs to it. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure we're watching that in our all nighter on Monday, so we'll get to revisit that one there. But also got a lot of great fun coming up because my birthday is in less than a month, and we are absolutely gonna be focusing on some of my favorite movies in the month of August. So we're gonna be focused on a lot of my favorite ones there, leading up to Candyman, which I am so stoked for. Candyman comes out at the very end of August, taking us right into September to the point to where y'all know we start the horror movie marathon. We start our spooky season. Goddamn spooky season. We are starting the horror season. Even though that's an all year kind of thing, but you get what I mean. The Halloween horror season is beginning Wednesday, September 1st for T Watches a Scary Movie. Our format's going to change for the following couple of months after that there, just because if y'all remember from last year, what we really got into were we started off the show. The show began 1 year ago in September. We are coming up on our year anniversary here soon. But 1 year ago in September, we started with mini episodes, and I covered about 10 movies every episode or so, getting up to our high number we reached by Halloween. We're going to try to beat that this year. I got a number in mind. And we got a lot of movies to get to. So we are starting September 1st. We are going all the way up to October 31st, and we're going to see what we can fit in that time, folks. So let's get down to what we're really going into this week, which is going to be Fear Street Part 3. That is Fear Street 1666. And our first movie, we're going to be discussing Escape Room Tournament of Champions. Now, let's really quickly recap the first Escape Room film, okay? If you recall, if you have seen it, or even if you haven't, but you caught the movie, in 2019, Adam Robitel, the director of such genre films we all know, such as The Taking of Deborah Logan, the third Insidious movie, Insidious: The Last Key, and Paranormal: The Ghost Dimension, came out with one of the latest crazes that was sweeping the nation there, the movie Escape Room. The idea being we're going to take just a normal premise, a normal game that everybody plays these days, taking escape rooms, which are still big, they're still fun, but they're definitely not as big as they were a few years ago. But we're taking an escape room and we're putting a deadly twist on it. Now, it's hard not to see the parallels between Saw and Escape Room because that's basically what Saw is that it's a large escape room that you're trying to figure out how to get out of without losing limbs, without losing blood, without losing, skin or anything like that now. And usually you're going to lose something. You might come out of it, and the whole goal is to have you come out for the better from that. Usually it's teaching a lesson to the people that are in those traps. And Escape Room kind of went the different route. The people who were in these rooms were pretty much innocent. And I know we have tough guy Jason from the first movie who kind of went against the grain with that compared to everybody else that was in the escape room with him. But even with that, he still was a victim himself, though. Whereas in the Saw movies, those movies are generally more so about the characters in those not being the best. Usually there's some kind of nefarious being. They're out there doing something they shouldn't be doing. They're out there causing problems for people. They're typically not the best people to be friends with, to know, And so there's a little bit of justification when the people in the Saw movies end up in those traps. Whereas Escape Room established that these people are all innocent. For the most part, they are all really good people that really don't deserve to end up in the predicaments that they've fallen into either. And so the original Escape Room, the first movie, left off with a couple of survivors making it out of the traps and then deciding that they were going to take the fight to the shadowy corporation Minos that's responsible for the escape rooms. Now, I have to start off by just saying here, I did enjoy this movie. And I'm a little shocked about that because the first escape room was a very low budget affair. The movie itself was really only produced for, I think 9 million. I think it was 9 or 10 million. It was a really really cheap film to make, and they made like 150 million or something like that off of it too. Like it was a big hit, helped by the fact it was only PG-13. So they really didn't have to worry about like losing a lot of their audience coming to see this film. But there was something just missing from that first film. It wasn't scary, and honestly, it really didn't seem too much in the way of high stakes either. The rooms themselves, it's not that they were poorly designed, but after you see, after you've seen Saw movies for 10 years, and we just got Spiral, the most latest Saw movie to come out here, which wasn't really about the games itself in that one, but even then, we've had a decade of Saw movies that shown us what these traps and what these rooms can honestly be like. So the first escape room left a little bit to long for. Obviously, Minos has a lot more money than John Kramer does to put on their rooms and everything like that. The first room was, it was basically an oven. The heat's going up and up and up and up and up, and our cast had to figure a way out of that room. Second room was the reverse of that. It's ice cold. They're on an ice bed that could crack at any time as well too. Room 3, I believe, was the one to where they had to do the heart monitor and figure out a way to either raise or lower your heart rate to a certain amount before they get poisoned. Room 4 was when they had the psychedelic trap, and they had to get an antidote before the drugs that they took would kill them. And then room 5 was like a smashing room, a room that was getting smaller and smaller until it would eventually kill you. The rooms weren't bad, but I feel if you were to go and watch the first escape room, like we did on our watch party just a couple of weeks ago there, you didn't really feel any tension coming out of that. Like, it was hard to really believe that these characters, even as they were dying, were like, oh, wow, you better do it before you die. Like it didn't make much in the way of sense to where like you felt, oh my God, get out, get out, get out, get out. And then again, I hate to go back to the Saw films, but in the Saw films, we kept feeling in all these movies, good or bad, that there was a timer. There was a limit. You had to get it done in this time, or there were some severe consequences. And I guess the idea of losing a body part, losing, an organ, losing skin, losing blood, sounds much worse than losing your life. Because at least if you lose your life, it's over, And maybe that's where the impetus was. But I feel that the producers understood that the traps in the first movie weren't all that scary. They weren't all that inventive. And so in the second movie, we go a little bit further. And it's funny because that does tie into one of the major plot points of Tournament of Champions, is that there is actually a different game master seemingly for every escape room they put together. It's not the same game master doing every one. And I don't want to bring up spoilers from the first movie, but that ties in very specifically to a character from the first film in regards to the game master position, because that's a big part of this film, is that Minos, for as crazy, as insane as they are there, they have ideas for how they want these games to go and who they want to run these kind of games. And it's a very, very purposeful moves that they're making in these rooms they put our characters in. So, our returning heroes from the first movie are trying to overcome the tragic and the trauma of what they went through in that first film. And that's actually one of the most enjoyable aspects of this film, is that horror films, especially when we get the sequels, can go one of two ways. And a lot of times, and it's hard to get mad at them, but a lot of times what we see in horror sequels is that those characters that live, that return, usually are fine. Like, it's like, oh, well, my friends died a year ago, I'm sad, and they mention it once and that's it. We don't really see much more in the way of trauma. They're back to normal, except for the fact that so the idea here is that, everybody's back to normal after like dealing with whatever trauma they did in a horror film. And it's always so weird when that happens, just because obviously I wouldn't know that or anything, but we talk about like PTSD and things like that in the real world over things that are not life-threatening situations. Like, obviously they come from that, but people can get PTSD from non-life-threatening situations. So as like us as horror viewers get older, I think a lot of us start to really consider these movies like, well, this isn't realistic. And I know that's stupid to say in a horror film. We're talking about movies that feature, like, not Escape Room, but like, we're talking about a genre that regularly features beings like vampires, zombies, werewolves, like things like that. And we're expected to, like to suspend reality and suspend belief. But when it comes to things like our mental health, those are the things that like we focus on, which is it's the weirdest thing in a horror movie. Like, yeah, vampires are real, but oh, that mental health isn't right. Something's off there. I get it. It's dumb. It's dumb. But it still shows up. And when you see it actually happen in horror films, that these characters are dealing with mental health issues from an events in a previous movie, I love it because that shows realistic growth. One of my favorite movies of all times, and honestly, in my opinion, the best slasher of all time, Scream 2, and I don't want to hear the arguments. You can put down whether you agree with that in the comment section or not, but one of my favorite films of all time and the best slasher of all time, Scream 2, we're dealing with Sidney Prescott and, and her friend Randy Meeks going off to Windsor College and dealing with the aftermath of a lot of their friends dying, a lot of people in their town dying, and friends of theirs actually being behind all these murders. And to a certain extent, Sydney plays with that in Scream 2 to where she's dealing with that trauma, but she really is just trying to get on with her life. And I know a lot of people criticize that, but it's hard because she's in college. And I do feel that the college experience, especially in the late 90s, early 2000s, which is really, really a big party scene, it's a lot of fun and stuff like that. I feel that a lot of the trauma is easily repressed in a situation like that because you don't have to focus on it. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, as much of a piece of crap as that film is, gave us a pretty realistic portrayal of PTSD and like people dealing with mental health issues, because Julie James, played by Jennifer Love Hewitt, is not the happy-go-lucky teen that she might be. And it's not like she was that in the first film, because basically after the events that set everything up there, that's when like shit just kind of went downhill for her, and she was a bummer for the rest of the film. And I love when we see that in movies, but it's not all, we don't always get to. And I love the fact here in Escape Room, the characters that we're focusing on, hence the name Tournament of Champions, are all winners of their own escape room game. And the fact that all of them are damaged so much, like we don't get like even the guys like the stereotypical tough guys that we might see in horror films, stuff like that, they're not tough here either. They are absolutely scared out of their mind. We can see that. They talk about it. It gets played up. And I think that's fantastic because that's real. That is absolutely realistic, that you're not going to just be okay after going through an experience like that. And one of the best scenes in the film there, because if you recall, the original Escape Room, this left off again with a couple of our characters, and we have to put it out there because there's no way to avoid it. A couple of our characters, Zoe and Ben, who made it through the escape room, are basically traveling to Manhattan in New York because they have a lead on Minos and possibly a way to shut them down. And it's interesting because the first film left off with them setting up a new trap, with Minos monitoring and knowing what's going on and what these characters are trying to do and anticipating that. And the film totally takes a left turn in this sequel and doesn't actually go the route that you would have expected it to, because it does actually pick up. Not immediately, it's not the minute after, it's not the day after, it's just a few weeks after the first film, which I really do enjoy because it still keeps up the oh Lord, what's the word? The impetus? I guess the impetus of these characters completing their mission. So Zoe's in therapy trying to deal with all this right now. Obviously, nobody believes her or Ben. There's no proof to anything that they went through, but she still has, her coordinates to find out the Minos facility in Manhattan. And there's some very big red herrings at the beginning of the film, which, it's almost funny because while I was watching the movie, I was like, this is absolutely going to come back later. Like, this 100% is going to be an important part later on in the movie. And sure enough, it is. And I can't spoil when, because that would definitely give it away. But man, does it ever come back? And it's funny because some people would dismiss it. But if you're smart and know horror movies, you're going to tell yourself, that's absolutely, that's important. Everything that person just said is important and will come back later. But either way, Zoe and Ben, who have been dealing with their own issues with everything from the first escape room, finally decide that now is the time to take on Minos, to head to Manhattan and figure out what's going on. And one of the most refreshing scenes I saw in that was we see Zoe's trauma. Zoe's been dealing with trauma since the first movie, losing her mom in that plane flight. But what's interesting is that in a short period of time, we typically wouldn't focus on a second character. Like Scream 2, again, I bring it back up. We don't focus on Randy's trauma. We're only focusing on Sydney. Sydney's our main character. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. We're focusing on Julie James. We're not focusing on Ray. Ray's not the one we really care about. And that's actually very common in horror movies. One of the only ones where they followed up with in a good way is, I thought, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. Because Nancy is still definitely dealing with some trauma from what she dealt with Freddy Krueger. But she doesn't show it that much. But her father, Thompson, Chief Thompson, like we're introduced to him in a bar, like that he has been just on a downward spiral since the events of the first film. And I thought that's awesome to see, because any other character would be like, well, we moved on, that happened years ago, who cares? And in Escape Room, we have two lead characters. We have Zoe and Ben. Zoe is our main, but Ben is a very close lead character, and we get to see Ben's trauma, that he is absolutely hurt and damaged from what they went through together, and that he himself deals with his own trauma in his own way. And that was so refreshing to see that. But we get introduced to all these winners, and they begin to be put through these games. And number one, the stakes have been risen quite a bit. These games absolutely seem like jigsaw traps. Like, simple as that. That is the best way to put it. There is that the traps in the first room, seem in the first game seem incredibly tame. In this second movie, this could have been a Saw movie. It really just could have been a Saw movie, honestly, because that's the way these traps really came off of. Is that they're very elaborate, but they're also incredibly deadly too. And I'm talking like hurt, pain, deadly. And the various rooms they set up are all way more interesting than anything in the first film. And you've seen some of them in the trailers, okay? They're all on a train car. The train car is electrified. How the hell do we get out of the train car? Another room to where the rain in this room drips. It's raining acid. That's another room. Another room where they're in a bank vault with lasers that can cut skin and appendages off and things like that. And there's more. That's just a few of the rooms there. The characters in it, which would usually be shitty side characters because they're not really played by a lot of name actors or anything like that, actually end up being incredibly interesting, because we get with most of these characters, not all, some of them don't get the characterization that they need, but one character, our first character who actually dies on the train, which I won't spoil at all, I was surprised by the amount of characterization they gave this person before they died in the train scene. And I was like, wow, we've seen this person for all of 10 minutes and we know a lot about them. We have an emotional attachment to them, and we just get to learn more about what drives them and how they're actually kind of a good person too. And I was surprised by that. I was very much taken aback by a character that was going that quickly, who we just met. We get that much information on. And then it happens with the majority of the other characters as well, too, to where when they do start dying, I dare say you're invested in these people that are dying. And yeah, we got that investment with the characters in the first film. I thought even asshole Jason, but it feels like it's way more in this one. And everybody serves a distinct purpose for being there. The kills are good. It is still PG-13 horror, so we're not going to get a lot in the way of blood and gore. Again, this is Saw for kids, guys. It's a PG-13 movie, so you got to expect we're not going to get all the blood and guts that we get in a lot of other horror films. But the tension is really real. That's one thing they stepped up in this film from the first movie, is that every room you do feel like they only have a little bit of time. You're hoping everybody makes it through. You know everybody can't. And it's interesting to see the paths that they take with this film. It's another franchise builder, so I will say this is that one of my friends who saw this, Mr. Eric Brady, had mentioned that nothing that happens in this film is actually important. And Eric is right. My man E is right on the money with this. I enjoyed this film, but nothing in it that happens in it is actually important to anything at all. There's maybe one particular part that is actually important involving a from the first film that we find out towards the end of the movie. And that's important because it does actually make us want to look back at some things from the first film and from this movie as well too. But outside of that, this film definitely sets up a third movie, but it makes itself completely useless because nothing outside of one or two moments in this actually are probably going to matter in that third film. But either way, pleasantly surprised. Make sure to check that out there. Escape Room Tournament of Champions, ladies and gentlemen. And let's move on to our final film of the night. That's right, folks. We are talking Fear Street Part 3. This is Fear Street Part 3, 1666. And damn it, I always have to like remind myself what it actually is, because I always say, I think I said 1766, I think I said 1966 at one point too, and it's not either of those, obviously. But Fear Street Part 2 left off with our characters finally getting some information on Sarah Fear. The first film set up the mythology of the series itself. Sarah Fear is a witch who has been terrorizing this town for the longest time. People get possessed, they start committing murders, and basically the whole idea is if you touched her grave, you're now cursed, and Sarah Fear and her killers are after you. The second film, we went back and looked at one character who managed to survive one of Sarah Fear's killers' murdering sprees and made it out alive. And it's our characters from the first film trying to find out how to live, how to make it through all of this. And we get some more information on Sarah Fear, on the curse, on our characters. We get to see a younger version of C. Berman, who was introduced in the first movie. We get to see a young version of Sheriff Good, who was introduced in the first movie as well too. But the movie ends with our main character Dina and her brother Josh finding the hand of Sarah Fear and taking it to go and bury it with Sarah Fear's body, and hopefully as a way to end the curse and save her girlfriend Hannah. But what it actually ends up doing is putting Dina into Sarah's body. So Dina basically gets transported back to 1666 and is seeing the events of Sarah Fear's life through her own eyes. And it's interesting because it took me a second to realize that, because here I was thinking at first that Dina literally was Sarah Fear, that she was actually Sarah Fear, and that's what was happening, is that they look the same, they're descendants and everything like that. But it turns out that Dina is just like, she's just seeing it. Sarah Fear is actually played by a different actress. It is somebody completely different there, as we start seeing in different like quick shots later in the movie. But Fear Street 1666 takes us back through the life of witch Sarah Fear. And we see there's a lot of similarities over the first couple of films with this story in 1666. Sarah Fear is a bit of an outcast. She's a little bit different. She's living at a time to where the Puritans have found a town in America, basically, and the original town was called Union, which is interesting, that name itself, because we know in part 1 and part 2 we're talking a lot about a divide between the towns of Sunnyvale and Shadyside. But before those towns broke up, it was all Union. And Sarah Fear lived there, and she was a bit of an outcast because Sarah Fear wasn't married. She was of age. Folks thought that was very interesting. And there are rumors that Sarah Fear is involved with the daughter of the pastor, Hannah, which is interesting because, yeah, I said Hannah for part 1. Her Dina's girlfriend is Sam, and Hannah is played by the same actress who plays Hannah in part 1 and part 2. So Sarah and Dina are both in love there and trying to keep their love a secret, and they live at a time to where, you know, life is hard. You know, you have to wake up, you got to do chores, you got to do work, you got to try your best to make it through. So at a party that all the young kids are attending, which the one thing about Fear Street 1666 is that it brings back most of the cast of the first 2 films. So anybody who was a name actor in part 1 or part 2 is back to play a different role here in part 3. So for example, we get Dina's friends from part 1 back as Sarah Fear's friends here in part 3. Sadie Sink and then her sister in part 2 are back also as friends of Sarah Fear as well too. Josh Rush, her brother, Dina's brother, comes back as Sarah Fier's brother, Henry, in this one. Sheriff Good is back here as Solomon Good. We get all of our characters back from these previous two films. And that plays a big story role because these characters are descendants. That's the implication here. It's a direct implication, obviously, with Solomon Good and Sheriff Good, but these characters are implied to be descendants of each other, hence why they're playing that. But at a party that Sarah Fier, Hannah, and their friends all attend, Hannah and Sarah sneak off to kind of engage in their love. And keep in mind, we're back in the 1600s. It is a sin to be homosexual. It is a sin to engage in a same-sex relationship to the point to where they see it as demonic. Like, it's not even a case of, oh, God doesn't like that, we shun you. No, it as in, we'll put you to death because this is a sin. It's an affront to God, and this can bring us bad fortune. So after Sarah and Hannah are unfortunately seen engaging in, a lusty act, there are now rumors spreading of witchcraft around the town. Fruit is going bad. It's rotting as folks are eating it. Animals are showing up, coming up missing or dead. A lot of crazy stuff is happening in the town of Union. And then we find out that the local pastor, Pastor Miller, has gone crazy and murdered the majority of the town's children, possibly ending Union where it's at. And unfortunately, a town meeting is held. And if you've seen The Crucible, if you know about witchcraft back in these times, making accusations is not hard in the least bit. And unfortunately, Sarah Fier and Hannah are both accused of witchcraft. Now, the movie itself it's fantastic. I was quite surprised at how good Fear Street Part 3 ended up being because I was very let down in Part 2. I wanted Part 2 to be the best because it seemed like an old school 70s, 80s slasher and bits and pieces of it were, but as a whole, I thought it was a mess. I didn't think it was as good. And I didn't really expect to enjoy Part 3 because it's very clearly a period piece. And wow, how good was this? To the point that they were able to sell a relationship between Sarah and Hannah, which I get part of that is because of Dina and Sam in Part 1, and we have that connection already. But these are new characters. And you have to remember Dina's black. And even though Sarah Fier isn't, it adds a little bit more to the tension because, again, we're back in the 1600s. They already don't care for Sarah because there's rumors of her being a lesbian. But we can't miss the fact that Sarah is black as well, too. Or that, that Dina, who is being Sarah, is black as well. So she's a black lesbian in the 1600s. And the bigger issues that are coming with that as well. And you can feel that. You can feel the hatred there. And even the hatred there that seems so evident today. That's what sucks a lot about it too, is that a lot of the shit they're saying and the shit that they're doing is stuff that we deal with even in today's world as well too. Obviously, not as much with the hangings here in America, but I shouldn't make light of that because unfortunately, that is stuff that still happens in other countries as well too. But they did such a good job with the 1666 portion here. That it's not really a horror movie. The parts here we're going back and looking at the past of Sarah Fier. We learn a lot of information about Sarah Fier and about these towns of Shadyside and Sunnyvale and about what this curse actually is. And there is witchcraft involved. Please believe there is actually witchcraft involved in here. But everything that's going around makes it more of a thriller than the horror stylings of the first two Fear Street films. And they did such a good job building this up and making Sarah such a relatable character and such an enjoyable character. The actress, again, that plays Dina and Sarah, Kiana Madeira, does such a great job with this role and puts so much emotion into it there that you just believe anything that she has to say. You really, really do. And color me surprised that I felt like we got a full movie. We got this whole movie here of what was going on in the 1600s that when we stop and we see that there is still an hour left in this film and another title card hits. And I'm not going to spoil it because we're going to have so much fun with that tonight. But that a second title card hits, that you can't help but be excited because you really do feel like you got a full movie out of the first part of this film. That when another title card hits, it's like, man, y'all just giving us Christmas right now, huh? And the second part of this movie, which I can't talk about at all because it gives away some very heavy plot points that we find out from the first part of this film. But the second part of this movie basically gives us what we would expect from a zany old school slasher film, honestly, in terms of the characters involved, the deaths that happen, and how bloody it honestly ends up getting. It ends up being so much fun. And it sucks that I can't talk about it here because I'm trying to avoid spoilers. But what I will say is we're going back to the 90s, folks. And you know how I feel about the 90s here. It was such an enjoyment to get back there and live in that world a little bit longer. Now, what I will say for all of this is that Lee Janik, our writer and director of the Fear Street trilogy, has said that she would really love to make a complete series and just keep on going, make basically an MCU here of Fear Street for Netflix. And given the way that this film ends off, yeah, I could see that happening because these films have done really good for Netflix. They really have. They didn't get a theatrical release like everybody wanted, but if they make more films, I have to believe that would happen and they would do fairly good. These don't seem like they're fairly like too expensive films to be making, honestly. But this movie definitely was the most fun out of the three. The first film had its place, and again, it was a very perfect way to show off like old school 90s slasher films with a supernatural element to it. The second film tried its best to go back to old school 70s and 80s horror films, and I don't think it succeeded that well, honestly, but there were still some good parts to it. This third one, honestly, is going for more a period piece suspense film, but then we get to head right back to the 90s for some more fun as well, too. So there's a lot to enjoy here in Fear Street Part 3. But again, I can't talk that much about it because the second part of this film, it gives away some very direct spoilers about the first part to even address that. So we have to watch it. We have to watch it so we can all be on the same page with that there. So that's going to do it for us. Get over to the Facebook group, y'all. Again, that's facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Again, that's facebook.com/group/T Scary Movie. Go ahead, get joined into the group. We're starting our watch party here in just a little bit now. We're going to be starting at 10. I appreciate y'all's patience, but we'll get into that there with Fear Street Part 3. And hell, I might just throw another film on after that as well, too, for y'all to join in on, too. So I appreciate y'all listening. As always, I love the comments. Give me a like on this as well, too. Tell me what you want to talk about in the future. But, folks, that is it for us tonight. I'm excited to see y'all back here Monday night for the all-nighter. Get those PJs ready. Get the Red Bull out. Get ready for some late night fun Monday night, folks. Thanks again. I'm T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.